Bringing attention to the destruction of the 3 World Trade Center towers in New York City on September 11th, 2001, and a whole lot more. This is 9/11 Freefall. This is John-Michael Talboo filling in for Andrew Steele this week. Just to give you folks a little background on me, I have been a 9/11 truth activist since late 2004. While living in Indianapolis, Indiana, I helped found a We Are Change group. I was on the 911truth.org steering committee for a while. I am a contributing writer for architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth, of course located at ae911truth.org. And I am the founder of the Debunking the Debunkers blog located at 911debunkers, that's plural, debunkers.blogspot.com. My guest today is a contributing writer for the site, Ziggi Zugam. He is an economics student and an all-around good guy. He has been an independent researcher for the past 10 years and a writer for my blog for a little bit less than 2 years now, I would say. So welcome to the show, Ziggi. How are you today?
Pretty good, thank you.
All right, great. Now, as we always do on 9/11 Freefall, we are going to take 10 seconds of silence here to honor the victims of September 11th, their families, and all of the people that have perished in the wars resulting from 9/11. So we'll take that 10 seconds right now. All right, and that's about 10 seconds. So, all right, so on the show today, the first topic of conversation is that the markbasile.org fundraiser is complete. We have reached our goal of $5,000. Now, of course, the listeners can go and get information, more information than we're going to have time to give here, from the markbasile.org site. That's markbasile.org. He is a chemical engineer. He is an AE9/11 Truth petitions signatory. And if you want a lot more background on that study, the reasons for it, the whole debate surrounding it, Ziggi has been a guest on the program in the past, as have I, as has Mark. So you can, as well as Rick Shattuck from aneta.org, ANETA.org. We all, as a skeleton crew, helped raise the money to get this testing done. And what it is a second round of testing on the World Trade Center dust from 9/11 to look for the presence of the incendiary/explosive called nanothermite. In 2009, just to give a quick background, a team of international scientists released a paper entitled Active Thermitic Material Discovered in Dust from the World Trade Center Catastrophe, where they purport to have found this material in the dust. Since that time, the only refutation in the scientific world of this paper was put out by one Dr. James Millett, who only published a preliminary report that was never peer-reviewed and claimed that these little red chips, which very well look like paint on the surface, were in fact just that. They were just paint chips, that they were not chips of nanothermite. So this study is hopefully going to put this debate to rest and hopefully be published in a peer-reviewed journal to where it would be 2 peer-reviewed studies against 1 preliminary report. It did take us a while to raise these funds. However, one must remember that we were a skeleton crew working against the juggernaut of AE9/11 Truth and their fundraising for their Rethink911.org campaign, which we all supported. Ziggi, myself, Mark, Rick, and during the time that we raised our small amount of money, they raised well over $250,000. So we definitely had some competition there. So, Ziggi, where do you see things going from here? What are your expectations?
To begin with, I think viewers should know that we did the fundraiser on our own pretty much because Mark Basile insisted on being independent. So he did not want AE911 to fund the study or anyone else. So maybe that's part of the reason it took us so long. But some people have asked me why AE 911 or Richard Gage did not just pay for the new study. But this was Mark Basile was pretty firm on remaining independent.
Right, and it's important that they know also that if it wasn't for Richard Gage, we would have never gotten in touch with Mark Basile. So in that way, he very much supported the study in that he helped get it going. But anyway, continue if you'd like.
So, well, the other thing is that right now we don't really have a plan laid out. We cannot make any promises as to when we see results or when we will start to see papers. But of course, we are hoping the work will commence right away. But we don't really know. We're hoping it would be fantastic to have a paper before the next 9/11 anniversary. But we don't really know. And the thing is that there's so much data being collected. I mean, Basile is planning for so many tests that I kind of doubt that it will be possible to put all of that stuff in one paper. So we might actually
and plus Mark,
more than one paper.
You know, Mark has former data too. I mean, to his satisfaction, he's already confirmed that this was nanothermite. So I'm sure you would agree that you would like him to include his data that he already has within this paper or set of papers. Is that right?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think I would like him to publish the data he already has, and maybe he could include some of the new tests. But I think to get all that stuff, all those new tests in, we would need at least one other paper to be published sometime in the future. But we, of course, don't want to get ahead of ourselves. But I think
now, one thing I do know is that he is going to start by testing paint samples and try to rule out the paint first before he even gets into testing what he believes are the nanothermite samples, because he has what are known World Trade Center primer paint samples and then suspected World Trade Center paints. Now, some data that he's just released, during the fundraising to drum things up and show what he's doing is we have video that can be seen. It can be seen at the 9/11 Debunkers site. I forget what you would type in to find that. If you want to think about that real quick while I explain it, Ziggy, that'd be great. But what it shows is Mark bringing to the ignition temperature of the nanothermite this World Trade Center paint chip, as well as just a couple other paint chips from his house, and they act nothing alike. There is no flash that is seen with the ignition of the paints compared to the nanothermite, and of course, most importantly, there is no molten iron spears that are created from these paints. Now, one thing that you're going to be doing is Mark has sent me one of these samples of World Trade Center primer paint, and in the original active thermitic material paper, Stephen Jones has a video where he shows they take one of these paint chips and take an oxyacetylene torch to it and touch it to the chip or get it close, and it flashes again upon ignition. There's a really brilliant flash. They say that when they did this
that's from the nanothermite chip, right? Right.
Now, they say that when they did this same test with the oxyacetylene torch with just the World Trade Center primer paint, that it just reduced to fragile ashes. But the thing is, we don't have a video to show that. So that's what we're hoping that you can get for us, that if I'm going to send you this chip, and hopefully you can show that it does just reduce to fragile ashes. And then I'm going to send along some other just random paint samples, too, to see what happens. So do you see some importance there in just showing something that's been stated but not seen?
Yeah, I think this is actually one of the problems with the Harris paper, is because originally I think it was much longer. Even as it is today, it's something like 20 or 30 pages, but they had to cut out a lot of material just to be able to publish the paper. And I think they had to cut out these comparison tests they made between the nanothermite chips and the paint. They do say that they tested paints also, and they did not show the same kind of results, but we don't actually see it in the paper. Mm-hmm. It would be really nice if you could, if Basile could make these tests and publish them.
Sure, and he might include your tests, hopefully, too. Or if not, it'll just add to the database just to be able to see it on video. Something else is that Mark is going to also, well, first of all, he already has tested a sample of what I understand to be metal from a museum that had dust-like material in it. He tested this for conventional explosives, and it did come up negative. That's probably not something anybody knows about as of before me saying it right now. However, this does not mean there were not conventional explosives used, and we should explain this. Mark sent a letter along to me, and I will read it real quick, and then I'll let you comment on it, Ziggy. Let me pull up the letter here. Okay, he says, John-Michael, I have had only one sample tested for conventional explosives, and that was a sample from, we'll leave this individual's name out for now. He says, I've attached a PDF file of an article that was a study on soil remediation from testing ranges where the soil was contaminated. They used lime, which has a high pH. The dust has a large portion of concrete dust, or a large portion of concrete dust in it, and its pH is also high. I do not know that this will destroy all materials that could have been used, but it appears that the dust is not a good preservative, and in large part is destructive to many of the materials of interest. So Mark did say that he would take, with this study money, and test another dust sample just to see. So comments.
Yeah, the thing is that the samples we have, the dust samples, were not sealed up and are years old, and the dust is so caustic that it actually destroys any evidence of explosives. So these tests are actually...
meaning conventional explosives, which test for nitrates.
Yeah, conventional explosives, yeah. No test would show any results because... The dust has kind of destroyed all the evidence already. But it might be possible to get dust from other sources that has been maybe better preserved. But of course we cannot promise any such thing, but it is possible.
Right. Now, I spoke to Niels Harrit, who was one of who was the lead author on the active thermitic material paper, and he informed me that, nitrates dissipate. Nitrates, which are what they test for with conventional explosives, they dissipate fairly quickly. He didn't give me an exact time, but that they dissipate fairly quickly, and that a professionally sealed sample from the site very early on would be ideal to try to find these, if that would even work. Now, one person who would have such samples would probably be James Millett, we are speaking about, who claimed that the nanothermite is just the paint chips. Is that not your belief as well?
Yeah, he seems to have, since he was actually part of the team that did the original dust studies for the government and for the EPA and others, so he should have access to the official dust sample. So he may have a lot of dust supply that he might be able to give out, but of course we don't know if this is something he is prepared to do, and so I don't know.
And perhaps it's something we should ask him to do, and perhaps it's something Debunkers should ask him to do. But if what he's done is so far is any indication, I don't know that I would trust the results anyway. The sharing of a sample would be nice, but of course they chastise these researchers for not sharing their samples, but I wonder if he would share his.
Yeah, that's so funny. When Harrit put out his paper, all the debunkers were saying that, well, because he did not send samples of dust to other scientists to confirm his findings, that the paper was bunk and all those things. But when Millett did his report, he did not send any samples to Harrit or any of the 9/11 truthers. But of course,
right.
The so-called debunkers say nothing then. I mean, but yeah, maybe they would be ready to ask Dr. Millett to send us some samples.
Yeah, and the nanothermite authors, they state that the nanothermite could have been an igniter for other conventional explosives, and this would make sense because it would cut down, even with wireless systems. My understanding is that you still need det cord as an igniter. with conventional explosives. Some amount of it that would be to where if you use nanothermite instead as your igniter, then you could blame its being in the dust on exactly what they've blamed it on it being just building materials, on paint or something, because of some of the similar elements within them. Isn't that interesting?
It's a good way to put up a stealth demolition.
All right, so I think that's about as far as we can go to speculate right now. We're awaiting an update from Mark, but we do thank all the donors who have helped us get to this point, and we will just keep checking 911debunkers.blogspot.com for updates, and markbasile.org as well as anita.org. All right, so moving on, there's an individual named Chris Moore. He does not bill himself as a debunker, rather just a truth seeker, although he has aligned himself with the JREF debunkers well more than he has aligned himself with the 9/11 truth movement, I would say. Now, you've gone through a saga of debating with him, and I won't really go any further than that. I will just let you take it from square one and kind of tell that story if you'd like to.
Yeah, I guess in the next section we will talk a little bit about journalistic integrity and honesty, and maybe how to engage other people in debates. Mm-hmm. As people may know that our fundraiser for Mark Basile was hosted by aneta.org, which is owned by Mr. Rick Shattuck. And Rick Shattuck also hosts the webpage for Chris Moore. Chris Moore has this page dedicated to debunking the truthers, and he has something like 238 points where he thinks he goes point by point and debunks whatever we say. But it's a pity that Mr. Shattuck could not join us today, because I wanted to ask him a little bit about this, because he has spent a lot of time talking to Mr. Moore, or Reverend Moore, as we should say, mm-hmm. Because I kind of have questions about how if there's any point hosting the page or debating with Mr. Moore. The thing is, Chris Moore has aligned himself with the JRF debunkers, and he is the one that kind of spearheaded the dust study by Dr. James Millett. So he started the fundraiser, and he was kind of the main man there. And Mr. Moore says that he said to me that he does not like to debate with people that are rude. He said to me in an email that he would no longer discuss anything with me, because he said that he has spent years or decades going to prisons and talking to child molesters and delinquents like that, and he says that they do not bother him, but that I bother him because I'm so rude, apparently. But I kind of wanted to
you as myself can use the occasional curse word. We can get very passionate, and quite likely Chris is passionate himself, does not want to believe this to be the truth, maybe is suffering from a bit of cognitive dissonance, so on and so forth. I have nothing against Mr. Moore. But aligning himself with the JREFers, they are some of the worst offenders when it comes to ad hominem attacks and such things. So, but no, please continue.
These are people that they, on a regular basis, they have names for all 9/11 truthers. They call us spoofers and morons, and they even say these things about Dr. Harrit and the scientists that have been working for the movement. They call them frauds and liars and retards and morons and all those things. And these are Chris Moore's friends on the JRF forum. I mean, and he not only tolerates them, he takes their advice, and he kind of they are his authority, really. He listens to them, and whatever they say is his truth, so to speak. And those rude comments or name calling and all those things do not seem to bother him when it comes to his JRF buddies. But but at the same time, he's claiming he does not want to talk to me or truthers that are rude because this is, offensive to him. So, I mean, this is probably an example of cognitive dissonance, but this just does not add up, and it leaves me and other people wondering if, what's going on with Reverend Moore. Is he just dishonest, or is he just deluded, or what's the deal? And how can he ask Mr. Rick Shattuck to debate with him if he behaves in this way? What's the point?
Yes, and it is good to mention, though, that there will be a series of articles coming out on AE911truth.org because Moore had made a large series of videos trying to take on Richard Gage's points one by one, and AE911 Truth in this series of articles by Adam Taylor, who is also a contributor to the 9/11 Debunkers blogspot, he is going to take on those videos point by point and go right back at him. So that is something to be looking for in the near future. Now, this kind of leads into somebody else that has been on the debunking side, but that we're getting different results. And this is Dr. Frank Greening. Now, he kind of started out asking, my understanding is he kind of started out asking questions, working with some truthers and things, and then became more convinced by the official story, at which point he co-authored a paper with Zednik Bazant, which is, there's been a couple variations of this paper, but it's basically the pile driver theory that the top 15 or 10 stories in either case for the World Trade Center buildings crush the rest, even though we can see the top sections destroying itself at least in half before it even gets to the point of impact. There's no jolt there. There's no deceleration like should be seen, as is demonstrated in papers by Tony Sambati. Well, interestingly enough, Mr. Greening just released a paper that at least his data is agreeing with us, even if he is not admitting that just yet. So you want to take us through that whole saga a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Dr. Greening was a co-author of a paper that was published in 2011, I think, published by the Bentham line of journals, the same journal that published the Harriet paper years before. And this paper is called...
which that in and of itself is it's kind of flies back in the face of the debunkers, because they try to attack the Bentham journals as not being worthy of publication, and here is one of their former own publishing in the very same journals. And not only that, but his results support our contentions as opposed to his former contentions in his former paper with Bazant.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if Reverend Moore knows about Frank Greening, because Greening, before Moore, was the kind of darling of the JRF Forum. He was their main authority, but he left the forum in 2007 because he was so disgusted with their ad hominem attacks. But yeah, now Greening published this paper in 2011 called Collapse Time Analysis of Multi-Story Steel Buildings, and it's not directly about the Twin Towers, but it relates to that because it's based on they set up kind of computer models of these 10-story steel buildings, and they were trying to see what happens when you pull out maybe one floor, and if the top will crush down the building, as was his conclusion in the paper with Bazant. But they found out that in this paper that this is actually not true, that almost always it's pretty sure that the collapse will stop in just a few floors. So the pile driver theory has pretty much been debunked there indirectly.
Yeah, the idea that it would continue all the way to the bottom and not arrest itself at some point, it's not holding up. And it's not only holding up according to his paper, but there's also been another paper recently by mechanical engineer Tony Sambati, and so if you'd like to talk about that as well.
Mr. Sambati put out a paper in 2013, and this one is about the Twin Towers, and it's actually a response to the Basile paper, which Dr. Greening co-authored, and they go over the calculations, and they show that the pile driver theory was based on kind of massively overstating the potential energy of the upper block and the ability of the lower block to absorb the energy. And they found out that in reality, the pile driver would actually stop in just 1 or 2 floors. So the complete collapse of the Twin Towers is not possible. So this kind of this agrees very well with Dr. Greening's new findings. And it's interesting to note that Dr. Greening recently appeared on an interview for No Lies Radio with Kevin Barrett, and there's actually a little article on debunking the debunkers on this episode, because people may have heard about that the BBC wrote an article recently.
Yeah, if you want to just if you want to read that article verbatim, that'd be great. You want to just share it with the readers?
Let's see if I can find it here.
Should be right up towards
BBC caught fabricating Dr. Greening's support for the official 9/11 narrative. And, well, I guess I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but the BBC published an article in December 2013 called "Canadians Wary of 9/11 Explanations and of U.S. Officials." And in it, they say that Dr. Greening is actually an independent scientist that has researched this topic for years and knows the truthers and the debunkers. And the BBC claims that Dr. Greening has found out for himself that yes, it is true that the pile driver is possible, and they cite his paper, and they say that, you know, Dr. Greening actually gave up on the truthers because they refused to, you know, to listen to the truth. But as I go over in the article, the complete opposite is actually true, because, well, first of all, Dr. Greening actually left the so-called debunkers in disgust. He was the kind of main authority on the Jera forum. He left them in 2007 because he basically gave up on the ad hominem attacks. And I mentioned that he actually has, in public, said that he doubts the NIST Building 7 report. He says it does not add up. And he appeared on this radio show the other day where he says, for one thing, well, it's true that he no longer supports the official story for Building 7, and that he's also growing increasingly skeptical about the Twin Tower explanation and the 9/11 narrative in general. So he's becoming pretty skeptical.
Now that doesn't mean that he's supporting controlled demolition, but
no, he's not a truther, you know, in that sense. But he's also not a debunker anymore. He's really skeptical of, but he's definitely, you know, I think he's starting to say that well, the official reports make no sense. You know, that's a very good starting point. So
and if the official reports make no sense, what is the alternative? The largest competing theory, obviously, is controlled demolition. You know, I would take it to where I think is the obvious conclusion, but
yeah. So I think he's pretty close to starting to at least support the truthers' call for a new investigation, a real investigation.
Right.
And this is something actually, and it's also very interesting that he notes in the interview that he knows about, because they talked about the BBC article, and he says straight out that he knows about the article and how the BBC kind of blatantly misrepresented his attitude, that he just basically lied about what he thinks. So
yeah, I mean, when I reported on it, I took it to, you know, from the way they reported on it, that, you know, that he really hadn't changed his. I don't think when I wrote it, first of all, I didn't know about the new paper that he had put out. I think he told me about that afterwards. But He did come up with a theory that I believe Scootle from the blog dubbed as intelligent, malevolent thermite, if you want to talk about that for a second, too.
Which was that theory? I forget.
Well, he basically said that maybe natural thermite reactions had taken place in the buildings. And
that was one of his early theories, I think.
Yeah.
But I think actually he has explained that he was kind of just playing the devil's advocate for the debunkers. So he kind of, I think he has retracted most of his old stuff about the thermite and all those things.
Yeah, well, I do know he admitted some errors there, too, when he had his debate with Stephen Jones. But since the BBC was using him as a voice of authority against the truthers, I thought it was good to point those things out. But the things that you've brought to light since are more important, for sure.
Yeah, and I kind of wonder if these kind of things are signaling, if we're getting to a point where this is actually what I wanted to talk about with Mr. Shattuck. This was where I was getting at with Chris Moore and his Aneta page. This kind of thing with the BBC. I mean, and I think I can say this for us all, and even Dr. Greening, that we're all so tired of being misrepresented and of the kind of dishonest reporting. And this is why I wanted to ask Mr. Shattuck if he is ready to tolerate the same kind of thing from Chris Moore at his Aneta page, if it's maybe time to confront him about these things, if he maybe ask him if he knows about this thing with Dr. Greening and how the BBC completely lied about his attitude, and if maybe we should write up a little letter and publish it at the Mr. Moore's webpage and just kind of go over a few of these things and kind of confront him about this kind of dishonest representation of our views and the kind of ignoring of all the evidence and the kind of if we should maybe confront him about if it's maybe time to really take another look at this stuff and bring a new attitude.
Yeah. And there's a lot of misconceptions out there. One thing I wanted to bring up today is my personal view. A lot of people, like I state right on the front of the Debunker site, they only see the issues surrounding 9/11 in black and white. Either it was an inside job or it was, completely done by foreign terrorists. What the evidence, the conclusion it leads me to is that foreign terrorists were involved, but that they were allowed to succeed in many ways, possibly helped along in many ways, and had their results amplified by the controlled demolitions. And I think that's another huge misconception, because I know there are truthers that disagree with me on that, but there are plenty that do not and have always kind of held the position that I just expressed. But you don't see that kind of nuanced view represented in the media at all. So
yeah, it's kind of strange that the people forget that there's so many other things about this official 9/11 narrative that people still do not know about. For example, the way the terrorists were kind of tied in with the government, how the Al-Qaeda organization was, started out as like an outpost from the CIA, and how, they were most likely all of them under surveillance,
they had been infiltrated 9/11. At the highest levels. There were operatives in the CIA, or at least assets that had infiltrated the training camps, and yet apparently that no information was shared. That any plan was going on. However, we know about the so-called American Al-Qaeda, I forget his name, and he talked about that this was well known. So and that dovetails with just a mountain of prior knowledge indicating complicity, which, you know, is detailed at the 9/11 Debunkers site, and hopefully will be detailed a lot more in a forthcoming book that we're working on. But I don't want to promise that. I'm sick of promising projects that never come to fruition because there's just so much we're always working on. But yeah, there's just a mountain of prior knowledge, and some of it is just so specific.
I mean, talking about the same thing, it's not only prior knowledge. We know there have been reports of FBI agents that, you know, they knew about the plot and they tried to stop it, but they were actually prevented. Their bosses prevented them from investigating the hijackers, and we know that foreign intelligence agencies also knew about the plot, and they tried to warn the government. But nothing was done, or even actively, you know, they even actively stopped the investigations. But now we hear politicians kind of trying to justify the NSA surveillance state by saying that, okay, this is necessary to prevent another 9/11 attack. You know, if we had this kind of spying before 9/11, then maybe it could have been prevented. But that's as soon as you know about the history of 9/11 and the how it worked, because they were already spying and they knew about the whole thing, but nothing was done. So
yeah, I often point to
perspective.
Yeah, I often point to family member Patty Casaza, who says that whistleblowers told her that the government knew the exact date, the exact targets, and the exact means of the attack to be done with airplanes, and that it would be done on the World Trade Center, and that they knew the exact date. Now, debunkers will say that's hearsay. They'll say, you know, where are these whistleblowers, or that, you know, they were just lying to her, why they would lie to a 9/11 family member about such things, you know, or, you know, maybe even questioning if they are who they said they were. But we know she was working with legitimate whistleblowers. We know that she was part of the family steering committee that was overseeing the 9/11 Commission that helped in its formulation, and that she tried to bring whistleblowers before them and was promised that all whistleblowers would be heard. And really the only one that was heard was Sibel Edmonds from the FBI, who reported similar information, again, that there was, you know, attacks in major cities with airplanes. I'm not sure if approximate time frame was part of Sibel's claims offhand, but it was something, again, that was talked about by David Shippers, who was the prosecutor of Bill Clinton for his impeachment. So here he is, a Republican, a conservative, you know, definitely not a person that you would think would be doing this for any kind of political reason. And he said that whistleblowers had came to him from the FBI and told him that there were operatives already in the country, that the approximate time frame was given, and I believe also the targets were mentioned as well, and that's just a couple pieces of corroborating information, and there's even more. There was a whistleblower in 2011 that came forward and said that the World Trade Center and the Pentagon were known targets. He never revealed his name. I forget what they called him, but he did produce documents where he showed that he had made these complaints, you know, that this information was brought forward and never addressed. So again, there's just a mountain of this type of evidence out there.
There are some documented examples of FBI agents complaining about you know, their bosses stopping their investigations, and there is also Abel Danger, which is like a general who came forward, and
Anthony Schaefer.
And the list is you know, starting to grow really huge and ongoing, and these are the kind of things that you know, I think all of us are kind of tired of these things not being put out there by the media, and at the same time we see how the media, like the BBC, is still putting out these ridiculous reports, kind of twisting the truth, or even kind of completely reversing what people are saying, and I think people should also realize that this kind of behavior is a really big signal to all truthers that the kind of establishment is afraid of the evidence. I mean, why, if there is nothing to 9/11 truth, if all of the whistleblowers are mistaken, if there is really no evidence, or if it's all just a pile of frauds, trying to sell DVDs, why not discuss, take them on.
Put these people under oath. Ask them who their sources were, under charges of perjury. I have the actual statement here. It says, as I've written, as summarized in the books The War on Freedom and The War on Truth by Nafeez Ahmed, who personally corresponded with shippers, and I did write Nafeez Ahmed on Facebook and made sure that this is exactly what shippers told him, and he told me it was. And it is from those books. He says, quote, according to shippers, these agents knew months before the 11 September attacks the names of the hijackers, the targets of their attacks, the proposed dates, and the sources of their funding, along with other information. And as was pointed out to me by Fran Shore at colorado9visibility.org, again, David Shippers, he was the former chief investigative counsel for the U.S. House Judiciary Committee and head prosecutor responsible for conducting the impeachment against former President Bill Clinton. And Shippers stated at the behest of several FBI agents that he had attempted multiple times to warn U.S. Attorney John Ashcroft, along with other federal officials, of the impending attacks weeks before they occurred, only to be stalled and rebuffed in each attempt. And like I said, Patty Casaza has said that whistleblowers told her the government knew the exact day, the type of attacks, and the targets. So you can say that all that's hearsay, but it corroborates each other. It's the same type of information, And like I said, those are just two accounts out of many. So
and people are, there's still maybe debunkers out there that say that these reports are either hearsay or, no one has confirmed them, and but at the same time, why did they not support or demand that the government investigated all these things when the 9/11 Commission was working, and when they start to look at the so-called evidence for the official narrative, is the evidence there? Is it any better than the reports of the whistleblowers and all the evidence that has been, discussed by AE 9/11 Truth and all the books and journals? I mean, what, there's no, this doesn't add up to attack 9/11 Truth in this way, and completely, it seems to be all about just denial.
Yeah, and like that 2011 report, it was a report on Truth Out, and it was about a whistleblower revealing that senior military commanders prior to 9/11 blocked intelligence that located bin Laden and predicted World Trade Center and Pentagon were likely targets. And like I said, he was anonymous, although he had supporting documents to show that he had complained about them ignoring these things. Now, why were the whistleblowers that talked to Patty Casaza anonymous? Why is he anonymous? Well, Patty Casaza explained that they wanted to have, be told by the commission that they would be protected if they were to bring these things forward. Her exact statement.
But nothing has happened.
Nothing has happened.
And as far as I remember, the 9/11 Commission either did not talk to any of the whistleblowers, did not investigate the financial ties, or they kind of blocked it out of the report.
Yeah. What she had said is they wanted the commission to have them subpoenaed and to have them protected if they were going to bring this information forward, and they didn't do this, So without the commission asking them to come forward, they obviously fear for their jobs, possibly their lives, who knows what, So
yeah,
and that's what I say on the site. When we have an investigation that does not conduct forensic tests, because remember, the government was the one that had access to test for these conventional explosives to get the sealed samples. They didn't do these very cheap, hundreds of dollars just for preliminary explosives testing. They didn't do the forensic tests. They didn't subpoena the whistleblowers. When it comes to the air defense that day, they didn't release prior data about intercepts that would show whether they were really slow or whether that was a normal type of intercept. Adrian Monahan had sent FOIA requests to NORAD, and the FAA requesting such data. The FAA said they didn't have such data, and NORAD said that they are a bicontinental organization and therefore don't have to share such data. So when they're not releasing data, when they're not doing the tests, and when they're not investigating whistleblower claims, what is to prevent an inside job from happening, even if 9/11 wasn't one?
Yeah. But I think finally there's a lot of people starting to realize, how lame the investigation was and how kind of corrupt the government is, not just in the U.S., but, Europe, and false flag attacks are no longer this kind of mysterious secret that nobody knows about. People are starting to hear about these things, and I think this is kind of my point about talking about Dr. Greening and the BBC article and Reverend Chris Moore. I mean, if Chris Moore or some of his friends are listening today, I think this is kind of my message today, that I kind of, in general, we are tired of being misrepresented and tired of people ignoring the evidence. And I mean, they should know how obvious their behavior is, how obvious the denial is, how obvious the ad hominem attacks are, and how obvious it is that there is plenty of evidence that was never investigated and that should be investigated. And that I think this was what I was going to say with Mr. Sherrod. I mean, if people are not willing to address the evidence and engage in a proper discussion, there is no point in hosting a web page with 238 points. There is no point in trying to discuss these things with people that refuse to acknowledge the evidence, that just are in complete denial and use name calling and all that. So, I mean, we are ready to move on, and I guess that brings us to the next thing we wanted to kind of remind people, and that is the upcoming lawsuit against NIST, or at this point it's not actually a lawsuit, but as some people may know, the Journal of 9/11 Truth recently published a letter by Dr.
The
William
Journal of 9/11
Pepper.
Studies.
Yeah. A letter from Dr. William Pepper, who is a lawyer representing AE 9/11 Truth, and it's to the Department of Commerce, which is the NIST belongs to the Department of Commerce, so it's kind of directed at them, and I think it has already been directed at NIST to respond. But he is saying to NIST that he has a large group of serious professionals behind him, and that they have investigated the report on the collapse of VTC-7, and that they know it is false. That they have kind of debunked the report in a very specific ways, and it looks like the report was very shoddy to begin with. And they are saying, the letter says that if they refuse to answer, or if they are going to try to stonewall them or try any kind of any kind of shenanigans, then the case will end up in court.
Yeah, this is interesting because it harkens back to the thing that say nanothermite can never be 100% confirmed for everybody, and say that we can never get those sealed samples we want to forensically prove anything. What we can prove is that they engaged in complete and total and utter fraud in the way that they investigated the collapse of Building 7, for instance, leaving out stiffener plates where there should have been, and things such as this, and that we can prove that their theories do not hold up. Where we go from there, that's at least scientific fraud, and you prosecute what you can. So do you want to speak to some of the things that we know that NIST has done that are absolutely provable, like the stiffener plates?
Well, there are a few articles on 9/11 Blogger that are by Mr. Tony Sambodi and some of his friends that have been going over the report, and they are the ones that are kind of behind this effort to kind of go against NIST. I'm not sure. It's not really easy to go into detail about what they are saying, because I think you need a visual representation, but you can see the articles on 9/11 Blogger, and they have videos and stuff. But
yeah, you're right. The visual representations really do make it clear how just blatant some of these things are. So yeah, that's a good suggestion there. People should go and just. I believe right now, towards the top of 9/11 Blogger, there's a section where all of these articles can be found. So.
And there's actually an article on our blog about this thing. It's called Lawsuit Against NIST on the Way, and I wrote it, and it's just a very short article, and it goes over what is being said, and I think people should basically. It's probably best that people just go over this for themselves, and but in general, I can say that Mr. Samboti and others have gone over the report, and they have debunked the mechanism that NIST says started the collapse of Building 7. And it's very, without going into any details, as soon, any kind of research will very quickly demonstrate that, the NIST hypothesis was ridiculous to begin with, and it's very hard to believe that, they came to this conclusion, going the normal scientific way to look at the evidence and then form, a conclusion. It just looks like they began with a conclusion they wanted, and they kind of fitted the evidence set up in their computer models to fit their theory. And it's so ridiculous that and this is the thing that at least if they end up going to court, I think they will show that NIST did a horrible job, and it's very easy to believe that they could end up suing NIST for fraud. And
have you seen this the new ballot initiative, the High Rise Safety Initiative that I just posted on last night? Have you got a chance to look at that at all?
No, I didn't see it.
It's an effort by NYC CAN, and it says they are excited to announce the launch of the High Rise Safety Initiative, a new ballot initiative that will amend the New York City Charter to require the New York City Department of Buildings to investigate all high-rise building collapses occurring in New York City on or after September 11, 2001, except the collapse of World Trade Center 1 and 2. The initiative will apply to the collapse of World Trade Center 7 on September 11th, as well as any high-rise collapse that occurs in the future. It says, as many of you know, the City of New York blocked NYC CAN's 2009 ballot initiative from going before the voters and becoming law. 5 years later, we are sponsoring a new ballot initiative that has been carefully crafted to withstand any legal challenge the city might bring. And it says, for the proposed charter amendment to appear on November 4th, 2014, they need 30,000 signatures from registered New York City voters and a second submission of 15,000 signatures by September 5th, 2014. To be sure we have enough valid signatures, they say they are aiming to gather 75,000 signatures for the first submission and 35,000 signatures for the second submission. And after that, they'll have to face off against the city over the legality of the petition, a battle they are confident of winning. And once it's on the ballot, they will launch a full-scale electoral campaign to educate New York voters about the need for high-rise safety initiative. And this is a really interesting tactic, I think, because it's taking conspiracy completely out of the question and just asking, when a building completely collapses to the ground and it's not struck by a plane, we should have, some changes to the charter here to investigate these things, so it would bring Building 7 into the fold as well as all buildings in the future. It's not just a focus on Building 7. It's taking, it makes Building 7 part of it, but it's not focusing the whole effort around 9/11 and bringing in the conspiratorial aspect as much. So I think it's very smart approach.
Yeah, that's a fantastic effort, and I think these kind of things. I think in some ways this may be kind of the beginning of a turning point. I mean, we are We are looking at maybe seeing lawsuits against NIST. We are getting more, the public is starting to hear about 9/11 truth. We have new studies on the way, and I think this is the kind of way we're going now. I think the so-called debunking movement is pretty much defunct by now. I mean, no one has the patience anymore to talk to anonymous people on the JREF forum, calling them names and saying that denying all evidence and all those things. I mean, there's no one has the patience to deal with that anymore. So I think from now on I think we may be seeing a new era, kind of the beginning of things changing a little bit. I think we're starting to see that it might be possible that 9/11 truth is going to become known, and we may see some results in the next few years.
All right, well, it sounds good. I hope you're right. I think we've about taken up our time for today, so we're going to go ahead and wrap things up. Is there anything else you'd like to say in closing?
I think that's it for today. I think we will inform everyone as soon as we know anything more about the upcoming study by Mr. Mark Basile, and we hope that it will be finished as soon as possible and that we may see at least one paper or maybe two papers in the next year or so. But for now, we just have to wait, and I think that's it for now. And by the way, thank you very much to all those people that put up some money for our fundraiser.
Yeah, I do want to point out, too, I think the fundraiser, it's still there. Mark did say during one interview, a teleconference interview, that if he could get $10,000, he could probably use it. So if people still want to donate, he will put any of that money to good use. So I think that's something to point out. But we did raise the initial goal.
Raising money for the cost of the study itself, but after that, there's at least one paper that has to be published, and there's more cost there. So I mean, by all means, if there's still people out there that want to contribute to this new study, please look up the Aneta page for the Mark Basile fundraiser and give us a few coins.
All right, sounds good. Well, thank you for joining me today, and thanks to Andrew Steele for having me come in as a guest host. Good luck to everybody out there in the 9/11 Truth Movement. Thanks for joining us on 9/11 Freedom Talk.